Okay, so in this demo, I'm going to show you how to do some sort of background gradient and then also to give yourself a little shadow for your little shaped monster. So here is a little one in progress, but I'm going to go ahead and just show you quickly. So one thing you want to first do is think about the proportions. Some of you, I know, Illustrator, you might have started working like this and everything's really big and maybe your shaped monster is kind of awkwardly filling the space. So go ahead and we're going to shrink it down. I just want to go ahead and lock one of these later so I can show you. You can go ahead with your selection tool. Go ahead and select everything. And then we can hit Shift and Alt, and that will keep everything proportional. Now, oh no, what happened? Only my face is shrinking down. What happened with the body? Well, the body was locked because I was working on the mouth. So I need to go back and unlock any layers before I do this. So I'm going to go ahead and unlock. So I hit undo, and now I unlocked. If you can't see what's in there, just hit this little arrow, the little carrot kind of thing to open up, and now you can see everything here. And if there are any layers that are locked, just toggle them off. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and select everything, Shift Alt, and I can shrink this down and position it there in the center so that way I have some nice, position it nicely on your page. Make sure you have enough breathing room around your shape monster. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll pretend that I was finished with my little shape monster. This one obviously needs a lot more details. This is just a start, but we'll pretend that I'm at the end of the thing, in which case I'm going to go ahead and just take everything and I'm going to group it, right-click, group. And then that just makes it so it's all together. That way it always moves together as one, and I don't have to worry about accidentally, let's see if it wasn't grouped, and maybe I wanted to move something. Oh no, I moved, just this portion, or I accidentally moved just the eyeball. So I'm gonna go ahead and select everything. And again, I'm just using my arrow, right click, group. All right, and now that's grouped, and I'm actually gonna make a new layer. So I'm gonna make a new layer. And then I'm going to take that layer and I'm going to drag it underneath in the layer stack down to the bottom. And now I'm going to go ahead and just grab a rectangle and then think about a color that will complement your shape monster. Maybe, maybe I want to use a light blue because of the blue of the eyes. Maybe I want to use something completely different. You could think about your colors on the color wheel. I'm going to go ahead and maybe let me try one of these blues. I'm actually going to go ahead and grab my eyedropper. Let's see if I can get that blue right there. And one thing I do want to note when you're selecting colors, we do have an eyedropper tool if you need a sample. If you click over here and double click, you'll get these kind of sliders like so, where you can make things darker and lighter. But if you want to work with the kind of traditional look that we've been doing in Photoshop, that the color panel, if you double click over here in your swatches, you'll notice it opens kind of a different color picker. Okay, so if I double click on the color here, it opens the swatch like so with sliders, versus if I double click over here, then I can get that look that we're used to from Photoshop. So maybe I'll make this like a light blue. I want to kind of stay in the same family, but let's try this color. And I can go ahead and make a new swatch if I want to keep this blue. I'm just hitting the plus. All right, and let's go ahead and make myself a nice big rectangle, and there we go. I actually, now that I'm looking at this color, I feel like it's a little bit too dark, so let's go a little bit lighter, and there, I'm happy with that. Okay, so that's how you would just do a basic color, and then you could lock that layer. I am going to show you, though, how to do a gradient in case you want to do a gradient. So if you want to do a gradient, I think the easiest thing to do is to start with the pre-built-in gradient. So I'm going to go to my swatches, and just like you would change to a, whoopsie, I have to select let me select this. All right, just like you could change the color to something else here in your swatches, there is a built-in gradient swatch. All right, so there's this built-in gradient swatch, so just like I would change to any other color, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth line down. There's a little white and black gradient. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that. I think the easiest thing to do, again, starting with gradients, is just to use the pre-built-in one. And then right here, I have some modifications for my gradient. So I want to go ahead and do a radial gradient. So it says gradient type. I'm going to go ahead and choose this little one that's like a little circle in the center. And all right, so I've gone ahead and switched it to radial, and then you can see that doesn't look that good, right? It's like way too intense. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab over here. There is a little gradient tool. So this is right here, I can now modify my gradient. So I'm gonna grab the gradient tool, and you can see when I click on it, all of a sudden this little slider came up. So let me go ahead and click somewhere else. So here's my background. Again, I can put a color in there, and instead I've decided to do this gradient fill. I've done a radial gradient, but that's like too intense for me. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab this gradient tool, and first thing I can do is I can go ahead and swap my colors out. So I wanted to use a nice blue, so let me go ahead and double click here on this circle, and I can change the color to something else there in my swatches. Oh, there's a nice blue. And actually this looks okay, but you can, I just want to show you that you can change how intense the gradient is by moving these points on the slider. So if I want a little more white behind there, I can go ahead and move these. I can also take the end point and I can bring that out as well. So you can see that my gradient is now only in this circle versus expanding beyond my page. Okay, so that's how you can use the gradient editor. Let me show that one more time. So we'll just pretend that this was filled with a normal, whoopsies, let me get off there. Okay, so this is a solid fill, but instead I want to do a gradient, so I'm going to go ahead and switch to my gradient. I'm using my radial gradient, and then I'm going to go ahead and switch to my gradient tool. I can swap out my colors by double clicking on the circle. I'm going to use that swatch that I already have saved, and then I can go ahead and tweak this gradient a little bit like so. I can move these edges out as well. Okay, so that's how you would do the gradient tool. I'm gonna go ahead and lock this layer, and then the last step is if you wanted to make a little shadow. So a few different things we can do. So I have my background layer, and then on top of that, I'm locking it so that way it doesn't move around and doesn't, get in my way when I'm working. I'm gonna make a new layer, and a few things you can do. You can just grab an ellipse. I'm gonna go ahead and grab, let's see, maybe I wanna stick in that same color family. I wanna do a blue. And I'm going to go ahead and open it. Maybe I want a slightly darker blue. So I can go ahead and grab a blue, and I can just make myself a little circle underneath there. And then if this is too dark, if my shadow's too dark, right here, we haven't talked about this before, but up here, this is where I change the color, right? So I'm changing my color. I'm going to hit undo, and I can change my stroke, all that stuff. There's also a slider for opacity. So I like this, but I feel like the shadow's too intense. So I'm gonna go ahead and take my opacity slider, and I'm gonna go down a bit, and I'm a little bit happier with that. So again, that was just a little ellipse underneath. And then if you want to, you can also give your little shadow some soft edges, and you would do that by effect. And there is a blur, effect blur, and you can use one of these blur tools. I'm gonna use Gaussian blur. And that will go ahead and soften all my edges, and I can say okay, and there we go, happy with that. Okay, so that's how you can make a little shadow. And again, if it's too intense, just turn the opacity of the layer down. You can also change the color as well. All right, and then that will just help ground our shape monster in their space. Make it look a little bit more finished, okay? I'll go ahead and delete that, show you the shadow one more time. I'm creating a new layer. I'm getting my ellipse. I'm dragging out a little ellipse under here, effect, blur, Gaussian blur. I can blur it as much or as little as I want. And if it's too intense, let me go ahead and click away. You can drag the opacity of that layer down. So it's a little bit more subtle. All right, and then the last step would be exporting this. So remember, you're going to save it 2 times. Or I'm sorry, you're gonna save it once, and then you're gonna export it. So you're going to say save as. I'm going to say save a copy, put it on my computer, save on your computer. Go ahead and figure out where this goes. Put it on your Google Drive. Let's see. It says digital. Shape monsters. So I'll go ahead and save that. And then the second time, so the Illustrator is your working file that has all your layers that you can work with in Adobe Illustrator. You need to export it, and that's what you're going to turn in. File, export, export as. And make sure you click this Use Artboard. So you're going to click on this Use Artboard, and that is going to contain your image to anything that's actually on that little piece of paper, that artboard, right? So if you have some stuff that's clicked around outside, this will keep it out of your image. So I'm going to go ahead and export this as a JPEG. I'm going to hit export. Make sure that this is always dragged up to maximum, resolution 300. I like using RGB, but if you have CMYK, that's fine too. I like RGB, and then I'm going to say OK. And let me just show you the difference. If you did not, let's say I had some stuff over here where maybe I was thinking about, instead of green for my shape monster, I wanted to do, I don't know, another color. Let me just really quick. And I just did Alt Drag to do that. Okay, so maybe I was trying out some alternative color schemes here on the side of my artboard, or maybe that's where I had, you know, built my eyeball and I had some stuff hanging over here. Maybe I had a reference image as well. If you don't click Use Artboard, let me show you what happens. File, export, export as. Let me show you with Use Artboard. So this is correct, export. All right, versus if I export, export as, if I forget to check this Use Artboard, let me change this to incorrect, export. I'm going to show you what happens. Got a lot of folders. So you can see that all that stuff outside of my artboard also exported here. All right, so make sure you click that Use Artboard. Otherwise, all the junk that's around your document will also be exported as well. Okay?